It's time for the Horror Guys.
Woohoo!
I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
We're here with episode 97 to talk about some horror movies.
And we've got some horrible movies, that's for sure.
Horror.
Yeah, actually, these are... Okay, I'm not going to say they're all good. They're not all good. But they're all horror, though.
But none were really horrible, I guess.
Depends on where you're coming from.
Yeah.
One of them was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the one with the biggest budget and the biggest cast, and yeah, it sucked. I mean, this week we're watching The Mummy from 2017.
The Witch from 2015, or The Vivitch, as it's spelled out sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His House from 2020.
And Uncle Peckerhead, also from 2020.
One of our relatives?
Yes, that is the title. Uncle Peckerhead.
Yes.
Yeah. So, we should talk about these.
We should. Don't be a peckerhead.
Don't
All
be.
right. I had to go there. Well, where are we going to start?
Why don't we start with Uncle Peckerhead?
All right. Yeah, it's probably our lowest budget one here.
Yeah.
Least well known. It's one of the newest ones.
But it's my favorite of these four this week.
Really? Okay.
It is, yeah.
Okay. Uncle Peckerhead is from 2020. Directed by Matthew John Lawrence. Written by him also. Stars David Littlejohn, Chet Siegel, Ruby McAllister. 1 hour and 37 minutes.
Did you like it?
I did. I had read reviews that said it was funny, and
It was.
I don't go in for too many of the current comedies, but this was actually really good.
Yeah, it was.
And David Littlejohn likes us on Facebook now since a review, so there you go.
Uh-huh, and we like him.
We liked Peckerhead. Peckerhead likes us. Okay.
And I just noticed that David Littlejohn was in The Signal, which... Oh, wait, not in it. Okay, what was his work with it? Art department. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I don't think
was
he's done
involved
a
in
huge number of acting
Okay.
jobs.
Yeah, I saw his credits as The Signal. But anyway, John, if you're listening, The Signal is another movie that I really love, which is not a... Or, did I call him John? David. David Littleton, if you're listening.
Littleton,
I'm
John,
I'm
David
looking
Little,
at
whatever,
screens
yeah.
and talking at the same time. But yes, The Signal was really but that's more of a science fiction. Anyway,
All right.
let's talk about Uncle Peckerhead.
Well, we open on a corpse, shredded and half-eaten. Someone grabs an eyeball and starts munching. He then gets back into his van and drives off as the credits roll. Well, it's Judy's last day at the bakery. She runs across the street and offers for her band, called Duh, to open for the Queef Queens show across the street. I know, I've always wanted to open for the Queef Queens.
I just love small bands where they have all these awesome names.
Well, there's a lot of them in this.
Yeah,
Well, they're about...
that's kind of realistic.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many little bands like that struggle and show all over and travel and little shows and little venues. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the band Duh is about to embark on their first tour. She gets home to find an eviction notice. Max and Mel, her two friends, are all in, more or less, as they pack their stuff. When they go to get in the van, they find that it's being repoed. So they advertise for someone to loan them a car. Are you going to loan your car to a grunge band or... Not a grunge band. What are they? Punk band.
Punky. Yeah.
To go touring in? I'm not.
Well, you got to find that right guy, and luckily they do.
One cranky old guy gets on their case for soliciting their little notices on his van. He lives in the van, but after a little back and forth, he eventually volunteers to drive and roadie for them. And he says his name is Peckerhead, but his friends all call him Peck. And he explains, well, my dad always called me Peckerhead. Yeah, I bet he did. Well, their first concert is a no-show. Even the promoter doesn't show up to unlock the door. And their first concert goes about the way you'd expect. They have 20 minutes of material to fill a 3-hour concert. Oops.
Yeah. Well, they do eventually get in.
Yeah. And the sound system doesn't work, and they end up making $3, which is $1 a piece for the three of them. Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, it's nearly
Here's
midnight.
your cut. What? $3.
It's not what they had in mind.
Yeah.
It's nearing midnight, and Peck says he needs to go back inside for the restroom. It takes too long, so Judy goes after him and finds him eating the promoter. He's apparently some kind of man-eating demon. Judy screams, "He's a monster!" Now let's not resort to name-calling,
That's right.
Peck explains. Y'all said he had it coming. And where's his head?
Ate it.
Yeah, he ate it. Well, Peckerhead explains, every night at midnight I turn into some thing. I don't know what that thing is. I can't remember how or when it started, but it only lasts for 13 minutes, and then I'm fine. He promises not to eat the band, and that promoter did have it coming, they all decide. So they vote to keep Peck on. Besides, they need his van.
Yeah.
They stop at a guy named Nick's house to spend the night, and the three musicians are pretty much all attracted to him. Midnight rolls around, and Peck takes his medication and goes right to sleep. He takes this little shot of something before midnight to keep him
Sedated.
Yeah.
So he sleeps through the transformation. Yeah.
Judy and Nick are having sex, and she spots Peck outside the window. Why's he up? Well, he's still asleep when she checks on him, so what's going on?
She must have imagined it.
Yeah. At the show, Judy meets Shiloh, a pretentious douche who leads a competing band, and she doesn't like him. Judy wants to go to sleep that night, and Mel and Max promise to put Peck to sleep when it's time. When she wakes up in the morning, they're hosing the blood off of Peck.
Oopsie.
We get a flashback
Oopsie, happened again.
We get a flashback called "What Happened with the Metalheads in the Parking Lot?" And we see what Peck can do when midnight arrives.
And, gallons of fake blood, and, well, assuming it's fake blood, but yeah. Very, very bloody effects.
Shiloh complains that Duh is closing out the big show, and his band is now opening for them. Peck doesn't like him any more than Judy does. That night, their show goes really well, partially due to Peck winding up the audience. He really is a big help.
Yeah, he is.
Judy softens towards Peck a little. They end up staying the night at the same place as Shiloh's band the night before the big show. They hear about a couple of people that were killed last night, and go looking for Peck, who has suddenly disappeared. Shiloh and his band tie up Max, Mel, and Judy to keep them from the show tomorrow night. They literally tie them up. Then Peck comes to the rescue.
Messily.
Shiloh's band is no longer going to be bothering anyone. Except maybe the housekeeping service.
Yeah.
Judy wants to quit the whole deal, but Peck gives a rousing "you can do it" speech to get them to go on with the show. A record label starts showing interest in Duh, but Judy is more concerned about who Peck is going to kill next. The van votes Peck out of the band, but he suggests they rethink their vote since it's so close to midnight.
Kind of threatens them.
Well, could he turn on them? Well, there's quite a crowd at the show, and the police come asking about their van. And the three musicians are arrested right in the middle of their show.
Oops.
8 months later, the judge declares a mistrial in the murder trial for the band. They're finally acquitted and released. They have a new tour, and Peck comes to the premiere, much to the band's dismay. All right. And you said you did like it. It's your favorite movie this week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the acting and timing are all great here. The dialogue is perfect. The gore shots are excellent, and everything looks good. Yeah, coming into this, I thought it was going to be a low-budget indie film, and I don't know how big the budget was, but it didn't look like that.
I was so pleasantly surprised
Very
by this
professional.
movie. Yeah.
David Littlejohn as Peck is just perfect for the role. He's sweet-natured when human, and a monster when he's a monster. Everyone else does a great job as well, but he is a scene stealer. The gore is excessive, which of course you want in a film like this. The blood sprays in this one have to be seen to be believed. Yeah, I don't think it's even possible to shoot blood that far. I'm not a big fan of punk music, but I actually did like the songs included here. And although there's not a huge focus on the music, we do get to hear a couple of short songs in entirety. Overall, it's very funny, and at no point does it even hint at getting boring. It's hilarious and excellent.
Yep, it is.
And what's up next?
The Witch, from 2015.
Yeah, you have to say it with the two V's. The
Vitch. That's how the official spelling is.
It's
yeah.
dumb, but yeah, they did.
Well,
back in
they were
those
trying
days,
to-
the
Old
letter
English.
W hadn't been invented yet.
The Old English spelling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, it's The Witch from 2015.
And everybody talks about how scary this was.
Ah, directed by Robert Eggers, the guy who did The Lighthouse and some other good films. Written by him as well. Stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Ralph Ineson, Kate Dickie. Hour and 32 minutes. What'd you think?
It was okay.
Would you like to taste some butter?
Butter. Yeah, I didn't.
So
hate-
you're not blown away with the terrifying witch.
I wasn't blown away. I wasn't terrified. I thought it was okay.
You
It
can
was-
always
yeah.
tell the films that are targeted toward the mass audiences. Things like, I want to keep on calling it Somerville.
Oh,
Midsummer.
Midsummer.
Midsummer,
I liked
Hereditary.
Midsummer though.
This, they don't have monsters in them for the most part.
Magic and human monsters.
There's much more in your imagination, psychological thriller kind of. These kind of films get all these raves. It's the best horror film ever. And they all bore the crap out of me. This one, though, I did like.
At least it wasn't boring.
It was not boring.
I didn't find it boring.
I
It's got
found
that.
Midsummer
Yeah.
boring.
Oh,
I found
didn't.
Hereditary boring.
I didn't care for Hereditary except for that one scene.
Well, yeah, there's that. Yeah,
But Midsummer I really enjoyed. No. But anyway, this one was. Yeah.
nothing at all happened for like 6 hours until the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, but it was. Yeah.
There was one little shock scene in the middle, but yeah, there's nothing happened in Midsummer.
Well, it was the suspense building. You knew something was going to happen.
Yeah, all right. And Hereditary, we need to see that again sometime because I just do not see the appeal of that one. But I liked this one and you didn't.
Yeah, it was okay.
All right.
I give it a 6.
All right. Well, first of all, yes, there's going to be spoilers, but most importantly, when you watch this one, turn on the subtitles.
Yeah, their accents and mushmouth is something. Yeah.
Well, it's all done in like really old English dialect, and they're speaking real English, but it comes out like Shakespeare, and it's easier to read than understand, to listen to.
And it takes a little bit to get on board with understanding them. But yeah,
I found the subtitles very
really
helpful.
do help. Yeah.
Okay, so we start, and there's a man on trial in an early American Puritan court, and the judges are there too. They don't care for what he's been preaching. You know you're kind of a jerk when you're too harsh for the Puritans.
Mm-hmm.
The man and his family are banished from the town. They get on their wagon and move out into the wilderness, and they find some land, build a cabin, and start farming. You know, for the amount of supplies they had on their wagon, how did they have time to build the barn and the house and the outbuild? That was a fully built farm, and
and it was a
apparently the
busy
villagers
time.
weren't going to help,
And
so
it
he did
was
it alone.
Just them, yeah.
Yeah, I find that a little difficult to
Very
believe.
handy guy.
Well, the oldest daughter, Thomason, is watching the baby, and the baby just suddenly vanishes. We see an old woman taking a knife to the baby and rubbing its blood all over herself. It's kind of a dreamy-looking sequence, and we're not quite sure that it's real, but that's what we see. The family searches for the baby for days, but eventually they have to give it up. The father, William, and the son, Caleb, go hunting. They've promised the mother that they'll never go hunting. They're going to live off the land. Can't kill the animals. But the father is being a little hypocritical here. They're going to go do it anyway. Well, they talk about whether the baby is in heaven or hell. They get chewed out by Catherine, the mother, for leaving the family alone when they return. Caleb keeps looking at Thomason and having impure thoughts about her. Wait, that's his sister? Well, the youngest daughter says she's seen a witch in the woods. And for the dumbest thing in the world you could possibly do, Thomas then pretends she's the witch and gets more than a little carried away with her young twin brothers and sisters. Yeah, I'm the witch. I will eat you up. And they get
They
scared and believe
her.
it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. It might be fun to play those games today, but not in the days when they were doing witch hunts.
Yeah, bad idea.
Catherine thinks they're all going to starve over the winter, so William promises to take Thomasin back to town in the morning and leave her with another family. All she does is eat. Let's give her away. Caleb has an idea that will allow Thomasin to stay with them. The two of them head into woods to check on their animal traps that they're not supposed to be using. Thomasin falls off the horse and blacks out, and Caleb gets lost in the woods. Caleb wanders through the thickest part of the forest and comes upon the home of the witch. She comes out and looks quite young, not that scary old lady we saw before. She tempts him for a kiss and then pulls him closer. Meanwhile, William goes out in search of Caleb after he and Catherine fight over a simple little lie. He took her cup and sold it for money, which I don't know what the cup was about, but whatever.
Family heirloom.
Yeah,
and
he lied
valuable
about
and-
it.
Yeah, it was her one precious,
Yeah.
basically. You
It's
know.
my one thing, my
Yeah.
precious.
Yeah.
Well, Catherine swears that they're all doomed. She's a fun lady. Meanwhile, Thomasin finds Caleb outside naked. The next morning, the goats are shooting out blood instead of milk. Catherine says it's witchcraft, and William disagrees. Catherine just wants to go home. Not back to the Puritans, she wants to go home to England, which is probably a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, imagine.
Caleb then pukes up a rotten apple. An entire apple. How do you do that? And then the young twins accuse Thomasin of being a witch. They start faking being possessed, just like the kids in The Crucible. Caleb wakes up and is delirious for a minute and then dies. Well, okay then. William and Catherine both think Thomasin did it. The evidence points to her being a witch.
Uh-oh.
Thomasin blames their black goat, whose name is Black Phillip, and the twins are always playing with that goat. Don't play with the black goat. William threatens to kill Jonas and Mercy, and they suddenly wake up in terror. William locks all three children and the goat in the barn, and then they find the older version of the witch in there in the middle of the night. The witch comes for the three of them. Well, the next morning, William comes outside to find most of the goats dead and the barn torn apart. I'm not clear on what we found. Did we see the children's dead bodies?
No, I don't think so.
Well, he's assuming that the children are dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they are. He's attacked by Black Phillip the goat and possibly killed. Actually, he is dead at that point, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he really was killed. I wasn't sure at the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Catherine then attacks Thomasin, blaming her for everything. Catherine chokes Thomasin until Thomasin kills Catherine with a shovel.
This
Whack!
family is a little dysfunctional, in case you haven't figured that out by now.
Well, they didn't start out so
They didn't
bad, but
start out
they
that
all
way,
turned
but-
on each other very quickly.
Yeah, it's a little microcosm of destruction. This
Yeah.
family.
Well, that night, Thomasin goes out to the barn and speaks with Black Phillip. The goat answers and asks what she wants. She asks what he wants in return, and he wants her to sign his book. She signs the book and walks off into the dark woods with the goat. She comes upon a whole group of witches all dancing around the fire. The witches start to fly, and Thomasin does it as well. She starts to laugh. Being a witch is kind of fun.
So, a bunch of hallucinations tripping on the corn fungus, or was it supernatural? Or
You'll almost certainly need the subtitles turned on for this one, as they use period-sounding English for all the dialogue, and it's really, really hard to understand them at times. That said, the attention to period detail is really nice here. They're obsessed with religion, and they're cursed as sinners.
you know about the butter thing? Speaking of cursing and sinning and all that,
What's that?
Wouldst thou like the taste of butter? The Catholic Church at that time considered butter a sin.
Why?
I don't know why, but yeah, it was a no-no.
Huh.
So that was one of the things that Black Phillip was tempting them with.
Well, these guys technically certainly aren't Catholics, but maybe it's the same rule. Well, it's all their own fault, or so they think. It's dark, gloomy, and very grim, probably exactly like what life was really like for the Puritans. The whole story is essentially The Crucible, only limited to a family of 6 isolated out in the woods, and it ends just about as well. It looks good, it's well acted, the creepy factor is turned way up, but it is a very slow burn, and not much actually really happens until the end. But I did like it.
Yeah. Oh.
Which brings us to last week we did Dracula Untold from 2014. That told the story of Dracula with a brand new beginning. So they did The Wolfman back in 2010, which I thought was really good. You liked that one, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah, and they did The Dracula came next. So next up they decided to go for The Mummy in 2017.
Mission Impossible, Mummy.
Directed by Alex Kurtzman, written by David Cope, Christopher McQuarrie, stars Tom Cruise, Sophia Boutella, and Annabelle Wallis, an hour and 50 minutes. Did you like it?
No.
All right.
I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not either.
It was like, well, I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious, but it's Tom Cruise doing his Mission Impossible Jack Reacher action stuff, which I'm a little bit tired of, because it all seems kind of the same. Mm-hmm. And they mashed it up with this mediocre, I thought, mummy story. And yeah, and I was very tired, and I actually ended up falling asleep for a lot of it. and I just can't give this one a thumbs up. Yeah.
Yeah, any film you go to sleep on can't be that great.
Yeah.
All right, well, we start in 1127 AD. A group of Crusader knights bury a gem in a tomb with a dead man. In the present day, that tomb is unearthed by a huge drilling machine. A group barges in and says they're taking over. But it's Henry Jekyll who's in charge. It's, what's his name?
Oh, the actor?
Yeah.
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe,
yeah.
right. Yeah. Odd he didn't make it into the main credits. Oh, well. But yeah, but Russell Crowe is the first big guy we see, and yeah, okay.
Henry Jekyll of Jekyll and Hyde fame.
Yeah, spoilers. Well, he tells us that he's unearthed many ancient mysteries, and one of them is Princess Amenette. Amenette was set to inherit all of Egypt until her little brother was born. And that's always the way it works.
Yeah.
He continues explaining, vowing revenge, she embraced evil and Set, the god of death. They made a pact that would unleash darkness itself. And we see Set doing something to her, and she gets writing and letters all over her body. She then kills the pharaoh and his son. She was then mummified alive and buried far from Egypt. Credits roll. I know we're like 20 minutes in at this point, I think.
But you had to cover all that to get the, get the setup done.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in Iraq, Nick Morton and Sergeant Vale are liberating precious antiquities. Somehow or another, they're soldiers that don't seem to do any kind of fighting. They're just there to steal things, I guess.
Yeah,
He explains
basically.
that this means there's treasure. That means that they are treasure hunters. They get pinned down with everyone in town shooting at them, but then there's an airstrike, which makes everything okay. It's all right if you're a treasure hunter if you got the army behind you.
You betcha. That's why you bring them along.
Except they fall into a giant sinkhole where Amenette is buried. Jenny Halsey shows up, wanting her map back, and says the find could be important, so they all go down in the hole.
Way down in the hole.
Way, way down in the hole, yeah. We're going to wonder, when you crawl down in these deep holes, how do they ever expect to get back up again?
Climb.
Yeah, how far can you, how high can you climb a rope?
How far can most people? Well, they always manage to in these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they find mercury dripping from the ceiling into a small hole in the floor. There are many artifacts in the tomb, and the whole bottom of the place is made of mercury. Halsey says, whatever's in there, those strings aren't for pulling it, they're for holding it down. This isn't a tomb, it's a prison. Well, the enemy is approaching outside, so they have to go. Morton shoots the rope, which gets all of the machinery moving. Of course it does. You know, how many giant mechanical machines have we found buried under Egypt? It seems like they all have it. Every time you see a tomb in the movies, there's only these Rube Goldberg devices made of giant gears and levers and pulleys and rope that lasts thousands of years without breaking. And how often does this happen?
That's certainly a trope that gets used a lot. Yeah,
It certainly does.
Goonies and yeah,
I mean, some of the actual
The
pyramids had
National
some traps
Treasure,
installed.
and, all kinds of movies do
not
that.
like that.
Nothing this complicated as in the movies.
Yeah. Well, it raises the sarcophagus up out of the mercury. Morton then gets a vision of Aminette thanking him for setting her free. Well, they hook the sarcophagus up to a helicopter and airlift it across the desert, where they load it onto an airplane just before a sandstorm hits. Sergeant Vale is clearly very ill from a spider bite, and Halsey translates some of Aminette's story. Vale then stabs the colonel who's in charge, and then the plane's engine explodes. The plane is going to crash, so Halsey and Morton grab for parachutes. Halsey parachutes safely, but Morton crashes inside the plane. And there's a lot of the Tom Cruise action going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Later in the morgue, Nick Morton sits up. Oh, he's not as dead as everyone thought he was.
He's back.
Vale gets up as well and explains that it's only beginning for him. Meanwhile, at the crash site, the police are examining the wreckage and finding more bodies, including a bandage-wrapped mummy. The mummy then gets up and sucks the life out of both of them. She orders the dead men to rise, and they follow her. So not only is she a mummy, she can raise zombies. Halsey explains that they're looking... Well, a mummy is a zombie, though, isn't it?
Right, technically.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah.
Just a smart zombie. Halsey explains that they are looking for the Dagger of Set, a knife that when combined with a gem can bring back the death god Set. The crystal was buried in the London tomb, and the knife is with Aminette. As she explains this, Nick keeps seeing visions of Sergeant Vale, who is still very much dead. No one else can see him. She calls Jekyll, who tells her to bring Morton to him. Vale explains that Nick is cursed and that he needs to obey her. Nick soon finds himself being chased by the mummy and thousands of rats.
More action.
No, it's all just a vision. Halsey thinks he's got mercury poisoning. That would explain it all.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Meanwhile, the mummy is draining more policemen and looking more human each time. Nick knows where she is, and he takes Halsey to the ancient reliquary where the dagger is. Nick is grabbed by the zombie policeman and held down, while Aminette pulls out the dagger and tries to stab Nick with it, but can't. Jenny comes in and interrupts things, giving Nick a chance to escape. They manage to grab the Dagger of Set and run away. And this film is just like another video game. There's an action bit and a break, and an action bit and a break, and an action as they go from one place to another, solving a problem and grabbing the MacGuffin and moving on. Well, she's about to get them when the army attacks and captures her. It's not really the army, it's Jekyll's men. Dr. Henry Jekyll introduces himself, and he starts to change in front of Nick, but injects himself with something and gets control of himself. And he's got lots of the serum there in front of him in this fancy little box with security locks and stuff. And he's halfway changed before he remembers to open the box and stick himself, which just seems really, really sloppy.
Wouldn't you always carry some on the ready?
A timer or something, even if he knows it's coming?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Jekyll has Aminette chained up in his lab. He runs a sort of monster research group that recognizes and contains evil, he says. He explains that Nick has been selected as the vessel for an unspeakable evil.
Lucky him.
Aminette is in a lot of pain, and both Nick and Jennifer disagree with the way she's being treated. Jekyll plans to paralyze her with mercury and then dissect her, and they don't like that either. Meanwhile, in the London crypts, they finally locate the red gem that goes with the dagger. Oh, another MacGuffin. Jekyll drinks a toast to a new world of gods and monsters, totally ruining the best quote Universal ever had. He wants Set to enter Nick's body, where he can be stopped. As he changes into Mr. Hyde, we see spiders entering some of the workmen's ears. Okay. Mr. Hyde gets released and fights with Nick while the workmen release Aminette. And the only reason for this is because we needed a distraction. She drains a few guards and starts looking mostly intact at last. There's a neat scene where she breaks every window in London to create enough sand for a sandstorm in downtown London. Nick and Jenny need the stone. Suddenly, everyone is in a subway somewhere for some reason. Aminette calls for soldiers, and the dead crusaders get up out of their tombs. And we've seen this tomb before. There's a big room with like 15 tombs in it. But suddenly there are like 1,000 dead soldiers. Where'd they all come from?
They were all stuffed full, all those crypts.
In the subway?
Yeah.
All right.
Uh-huh, yeah.
All right, so there's more battles with sort of action stuff. And she finally gets to the stone and dagger. Then there's an impossibly long scene of Tom Cruise swimming away from underwater zombies. Finally, it's just Aminette and Nick and the dagger. She wants him to give in and allow her to kill him with the dagger. Nick gets the dagger and tries to smash the crystal on the ground, and she tempts him with the power of life and death and the power of a god. He looks at Jenny's dead body and stabs himself with the dagger. The crystal was definitely cracked, so will it work? Well, Nick pulls out the dagger and gets up. He's clearly not dead anymore. Nick then walks over to Aminette and sucks her life out, making her a withered mummy again. Nick then crawls over and uses his powers to save Jenny. Jenny wakes up, and he apologizes for what he's become and then runs off. Jekyll then shows up and collects the mummy's corpse for further study. The end.
So leaving it wide open for further sequels and further expansion in the universe. And
yeah, they had Jekyll and his
Jekyll and
monster
Hyde
organization. And
yeah, and
they're in the background of in his lab, we see several different little Easter eggs of other creatures. You got the creature from the Black Lagoon's claw I noticed in there, and something about a werewolf. I don't remember now. Okay, well, we'll get to that. The film tries to be everything and fails dismally at about all of them. It's funny where humor isn't necessary. There are action scenes where dialogue is needed, and there's dialogue when anything else should be going on. It's an action movie, then it's a mystery, then it's a comedy, and there's some horror thrown in random places. Mostly it's just Nick and Jenny running from one thing to another. Although there are obviously horror elements here, I'd really have to call this more of an action movie than anything else.
definitely an action, yeah.
Jekyll's lab is full of interesting Easter eggs. I immediately noticed the creature from the Black Lagoon's claw, and skulls with vampire teeth are easily spotted as well. Jekyll himself was useful for exposition, but to randomly change like that was completely unnecessary in this film, and how he would ever be in charge of anything with a liability like that is just unexplainable. His character was supposed to be the Nick Fury of the Dark Universe, but he wasn't all that impressive or even useful here. It's like having the Avengers and putting the Hulk in charge. Yeah, he's not the most reliable guy to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cruise really can act,
Yeah.
but he
yeah.
doesn't do any of that here. He's a clueless pawn throughout the film, and most of his lines are stupid comedic stuff that doesn't really belong. He's kind of the comic relief. He's ostensibly the film's hero, but in almost every scene, things are done to him, and he just reacts. It's really one of Cruise's weaker roles. Even at the end, where he's supposedly possessed by the god Set, we don't see him do anything particularly interesting. He's just on a camel, going off on more adventures. Just not something a super powerful god should need to do. Couldn't he, fly or teleport or something more than ride a camel like anybody could do? I can certainly see why this flopped at the box office. It is just a mess.
So yeah, what I saw of it when I was awake, yeah, you've kind of summarized.
Stuff happened. Lots of stuff happened.
Lots and lots of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, let's put it all in there, they said.
But then we're going to talk about our last movie, which was actually very good.
Yeah.
His House.
His House, 2020.
2020.
Directed by Remy Weeks, written by him and Felicity Evans. Stars, so here we go. Sope
these
Dirisu, Wonmi Masaku, and Malaika Wakali Abigaba.
And we apologize if we've mispronounced those.
I don't think I did too bad there. Hour and 33 minutes. And this one's on Netflix, so yeah, just easy to watch.
Yeah, you should check it out. Everybody should check this one out.
You did like it?
I did, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I liked it too. It was very different.
Mm-hmm.
So an African man carries his child through the deserts of Sudan and boards a truck. They then get on a crowded boat, and halfway to wherever they're going, the boat sinks and the daughter drowns. It's a dream. The man survived, but now has nightmares.
Flashbacks.
His
Yep.
daughter is conspicuously no longer with them, and they're in a refugee camp. They are Bol and Rial Rieger, and they're being released from detention as refugees.
In England.
In England now, yes, it's very clearly British. Well, their freedom is contingent on several rules. They must not fail to report in every week to the immigration people. They're not allowed to work, which I don't quite understand why that is, but okay.
It's a gradual assimilation.
Wouldn't working help?
Well, not initially. No.
Okay.
Gotta get them in housing, get them in the neighborhood, get them.
It's like they sat around all day doing nothing because they had nothing to do.
Well, yeah, that would have been a good idea. Get them out doing stuff. But I think the idea is to get them assimilated and used to living in England, and then a job and move on to other things. I think it's a gradual process.
Okay.
I think this was pretty realistic the way they do it.
Yeah,
so far
I think
as I
it
know.
I don't understand it, but it did seem very realistic.
Yeah, I'm sure that smart people have figured out this is the best way to do it.
Okay, well, they're going to be assigned a home from which they may not move. You will stay here. They leave on the bus in the middle of the night, terrified but hopeful for their new life. They meet Mark Esworth, a social worker who lets them into their apartment, which hasn't really been cleaned.
Doctor Who,
Yeah, Matt Smith.
played by Matt Smith.
Uh-huh. He doesn't do anything particularly Time Lordy in this one.
I think this is the first time I've seen him in anything since I saw him in Doctor Who.
Oh, he was
I
in
know
that
he's done-
Terminator movie
I know
and
he's
some
done
other
those
things.
Oh yeah, that was him in
This
Terminator.
is about the first dramatic thing I've seen him in.
Yeah.
I think he's in one of those Queen type things. Maybe The Crown or one of those other ones.
The Crown. Haven't seen that though.
Yeah. Well, there was another one besides The Crown.
Oh, okay. Haven't seen that.
Yeah, I
either.
don't remember which one he was in, but he was a prince or a king or something in there. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Well, anyway, okay, so it's filthy, it's got bugs, and it's in a very bad-looking neighborhood. On the other hand, it's bigger than needed for just two people, and Bol laughs until he cries.
It has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
It's
you're
not
looking
truly awful, but
It probably
it's pretty,
beats living in a grass
pretty
hut
rundown
on a dirt floor, which is what he's used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody's shooting at him.
So he's like, how many families live here?
There,
"Oh, just
you
two."
turn the faucet and there's water, and it's not the middle of the desert, and there's enough food, and it's definitely a step up for the and they're not getting hunted down by army soldiers, and
Well, there's that, yeah.
So it's,
It's a big
definitely
improvement for
a
them.
step up from their life in South Sudan.
Yeah.
The circumstances they were in.
Well, that night, Bol hears noises outside and has a PTSD flashback. He's scared by a bird and doesn't even see the ghost behind him. Wait, there's ghosts?
There's ghosts.
The next day, Bol gets to know the neighborhood a little better, and that evening he finds a hole in the wall that maybe has something living in it, until the hole suddenly disappears. Bol peels the wallpaper off the wall while searching for the hole, but it really is gone. Did he see that hole for real or not? Rial gets lost in her own neighborhood and has a bad experience trying to find her way. She creeps out the nurse at the clinic by talking about her dead children. She sits and just stares at the wall that Bol had his trouble with the previous night, and there's a tiny hole in the wall that has voices inside. She hears the voices. Bol comes home and talks about starting a family, but she's had a really bad day. Rial tells Bol a story about ghosts and voices from the walls. She thinks their dead child has risen from the ocean and followed them here. He yells that there is no witches and their daughter is dead. She's imagining the whole thing. She knows that he suspects something isn't right. So he's denying it, but she knows that he knows.
They know.
They know.
They know.
That
Yes.
night, Bol is attacked by a ghost with a knife. The house is clearly haunted, and he finally admits it to Rial. They go outside and burn all the daughter's things. They have nothing left of hers now. They're thinking it's some kind of anchor or something. You don't wonder what it tells me? She asks him. It tells her that she can get their daughter back, and that she should be afraid of Bol. He has some really crazy encounters with a whole gang of African ghosts. Or is it just his own PTSD causing this?
And there is some question a lot of times how much of it's in their heads and how much of it is really happening.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Almost all of it.
Yeah.
Bull goes to see Mark Esworth again and tells him that he wants to live somewhere else. He says that there are rats and bugs. Bull smells really bad. He's wearing dirty clothes. Mark says he doesn't look good and there's going to be an investigation. Bull knows he can't say that they're ghosts. They're going to think he's crazy and deport him. What can he do? Well, Mark comes to the house and sees all the holes in the wall that Bull put there with his hammer. He just went crazy and beat the crap out of that wall. He has to report this. Rial comes in and tells him about the witch. And so they think Bull and Rial are both crazy, but they do let them off with a warning this time. Get your act together. Rial wants to go back home, so he locks all the doors like a prison and won't let her out. Your life is not yours. You stole it, said the voice in the dark. You're mine now, it continues. It wants to trade Bull's body for his daughter's. Rial climbs out the window and finds herself back in Africa, and everything is just wonderful there. She knows it's all just a dream, but we see that it's a full flashback to the horrors they experienced back in Sudan, and there's no ghosts involved. It's all real. It turns out they stole Nyagik from her real mother so they could get on the bus out of the Sudan.
She was their ticket out of town, basically.
Yeah, they didn't have a child, so they stole one. The creature says, I can bring her back. Give me his body, and I'll give you what you want. It wants her to kill Bull. Bull knows the guilt. He cuts his own wrist and says, it is coming. It breaks open the floor and crawls up after him. It tries to climb inside Bull, but Rial picks up the knife and cuts the monster's throat. Mark and the social workers come back, and Rial says she killed the witch, which makes all of them happy.
All better now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, as long as it's gone. Bull has started patching the holes in the walls, and they say they are happy now. When they leave, Bull and Rial see the ghosts of their entire village along with Nyagak. It's their house now. Ghosts and all.
But they're good ghosts now. Friendly ghosts.
Yeah,
Happy
yeah,
ghosts.
they made up for what they
Peaceful
did.
ghosts. Yeah.
The story about the two immigrants I thought was pretty interesting, and we see some of the things that real refugees go through. It's certainly not an easy thing. The visuals are really good, especially Bull's dream sequences and the various ghosts that he sees.
Yeah, that was cool. And the scene with the light in the dark, turning the light off and on, and
Yeah.
the ghosts would only appear when the light was off.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Well, the refugee situation is hard, but nowhere near the stress and guilt of their own PTSD from the crossing and what they did to get there. The backstory about where Nyagak came from only adds to the stress and the tension. It's dark, it's creepy, it's emotional, and it all seems very realistic when considering the survivor's guilt and subsequent mental illnesses. They did the crime, and now they're worrying about they're paying for it. It's really good. It's a good drama, and it's a good horror film.
Yep. Thumbs up on this one
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm not going to say a fun horror story,
Well, not
but
fun, no.
it's a
but,
good one.
Yeah. A grim horror story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's it. That's
Okay.
our show for the week. Stop in on horrorguys.com. Check out our reviews. The podcasts usually come after the text reviews, so you can get a little ahead by reading them on the site. Also, while you're at the site, horrorguys.com/books, to pick up one of our excellent horror-based books, one of our film guides.
Should pick them all up.
Oh, yeah, all
yeah,
of them.
copy of all.
Paperback and ebook.
Uh-huh.
Well, get ready for next week, where we'll be watching more classics. What do we got?
We got Possessor, uncut version from 2020.
Yeah, I don't know what the cut version was, but the uncut version had a whole bunch of extra stuff in it.
More sex and violence, I understand.
Yeah. Feedback from 2019.
Train to Busan Presents Peninsula from 2020, which is a sequel and kind of an unrelated sequel. It's set in the same timeline.
Yeah, there was Train to Busan a few years ago. Then they came up with a prequel that was an animated cartoon. And this is the new live-action sequel that's only been out just for a little bit.
It's more of the aftermath, but none of the same people in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it takes
And no
place.
train.
Is it a year
No.
or 3 years later?
Sometime later.
Yeah, I don't remember
Yeah.
the specific time jump, but it's afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to look way back in time at The Mole People from 1956.
Now, there's a classic.
Yeah, holy moly, it's The Mole People.
Mole.
All right, so I'm Brian,
I'm Kevin.
and we'll see you next week.
See ya.